Hello and welcome to We the People. Multilingualism is something that reflects the multiculturalism of India. One would imagine that language wars should be redundant in a country as diverse as India. One would think that the English-Hindi debate was settled a long time back. But yet, this past week, we have seen the battle between English and Hindi, and it is often still positioned as that, surface again. This time it's hit the civil services exams. We have seen street protests by aspirants who are saying that a certain part of the exam that tests English comprehension and English language skills is actually a bias against Hindi medium schools. On We the People today, we're looking at the language debate. Is Hindi something that has been marginalized by English, often dubbed the language of privilege and elitism? Or is English the inevitable bridge language of India? Also, more to the point, around the UPSC and the civil services exam, is English a must-have skill to be a good bureaucrat? Like I said, this is an issue that surfaced in Parliament as well. But before we get the political responses, I'd like to start with TSR Subramaniam, somebody who has been at the highest levels of government. What do you make, sir? Somebody from the south of the Vindhya, certainly, you're from Tamil Nadu. Perhaps you find this whole Hindi-English debate actually mystifying in some ways. But as it applies to your service, the bureaucracy, what do you make of these present protests? And we're going to hear from some of the protesters here, the aspirants here, who feel they're being biased against. What do you say, sir?
Barka, I have sort of my foot on both camps, or on foot on 7-8 camps, because yes. I am no naturalized Uttar Pradesh wala. So I don't.
Yeah,
I'm not so much from Tamil Nadu.
You were a Tamilian who was a UP wala.
And when I went to UP for the first time to join service,
yeah,
I didn't know a single word of Hindi. Which is the background. Let me just spend half a minute or 1 minute on the general question, and 1 minute on the two questions you raised, 1 minute on the examination.
Okay.
On the general question, my best judgment now is that about 95% of government business in India is done in Hindi. Nearly in every
95% of government
maybe
business
90,
is done in
I could
Hindi.
be wrong, maybe 90. Nearly in every state, in Karnataka, in Tamil Nadu, in West Bengal, in Maharashtra, in Gujarat, you name the state, nearly in every state the language has to be both written language and language of meetings and language of etc. The issue is only basically about Government of India. In Government of India, out of 35-40 lakh government servants, something like 70% belong to two departments, railways and P&T, Post and Telegraph. And both of these have a pan-India kind of reach. Both of them require some English elsewhere. Having said that, once you come to higher levels, Deputy Secretary and above, that is where the interaction takes place between states. You can't have a Government of India meeting like a UN meeting with 7 translators. Number one. Number two, the spoken Hindi is quite different from written Hindi. And therefore, in written officialese, it must be absolutely accurate. You can speak vaguely, you can be ambivalent while speaking, but you've got to be accurate. So I think plus the language of United Nations, the lingua franca all over the world, at higher levels, there is a large contact all over the place, including in China, including in Korea. I'm not contradicting. Therefore, at higher levels, there is definitely a need not only for intra-Indian, not only for pan-Indian,
yes,
and also international. Only one sentence
yes,
about the examination
yes,
part that you mentioned just now. I don't know the details very well. 3 quick points.
Yes.
The UPSC is one of the few institutions in India which is still by and large pristine. By and large, nobody questions its competence. By and large, it has got a reputation, and with all due respect, sir, I don't mean it in the wrong pejorative sense. It's not politicized. I don't mean it in the wrong sense. It's not politicized. It is one of those respected agencies. I have a feeling that they have blundered a little bit this year in terms of translation, and that there has been some technical fault. I think some problems are there.
Okay.
Now the issue you raised is about Hindi. No. The issue is that it is English versus all languages.
And not
this
just
problem
English
is not
versus
just
Hindi.
about Hindi, all the 22 languages.
That's a fair point.
The issue is not Hindi versus the rest. And if there is a bias, I don't know about that. If there is a bias which is in favor of, shall we say, the convent kind of a school, the issue is larger education policy of India, but they should take heed for this and make sure correctives are done. But don't throw the baby with the bathwater.
Okay.
Don't condemn it and say that they should close shop.
Okay, Kirti Azad, where do you come in here? This is very interesting because it actually straddles both governments. This English language exam or these changes were actually introduced at the time of the UPA. The protests have swelled up at the time of the NDA. Now, most of these aspirants are coming from Bihar, UP, the Hindi heartland as it's called today, and we'll hear from some of them. They're saying that there is a bias against us. Do you empathize with them?
Yes, I do. Number one, anybody who's competing for these exams knows elementary English.
Yeah.
I mean, I have studied English medium, but my dialect, my mistakes are not correct, not that okay. But I feel that you know elementary English, which you can use in conversation, as I'm doing at the moment. Secondly, if you're coming from a particular area, particular region, particular language, if the medium is that particular regional language for that person, I think that shouldn't be a problem. Because English would be elementary English for everyone, which everyone gives an exam. But the medium exams, if they are going to be in the regional language, would be much better and easier done than really having those English questions put across to students. And at times when they are translating those questions into regional languages, the language is so vague that one doesn't actually understand that what the question is.
So you don't feel that a bureaucrat going forward in the highest levels of government would need to know English?
And the elementary English is good enough.
Elementary English is good enough.
Is good enough
to be a successful bureaucrat.
Why not? I mean, listen.
Yeah.
We have the legacy of the British ruling us over 200 years. So English has become a language, a medium for all of us. And we've had our own languages. So it can be a language, elementary exams could be given in that, and let everybody
Before I get Manish and Pavan in this, let's just put what Kirti has said to the audience. Those of you who think that an elementary language, functional English, is enough to be a good bureaucrat and your main competence can be in another language, raise your hand. Those of you who agree that you don't necessarily need to know a lot of English. Do you agree?
Yes, I do actually, because I do agree with him that you don't need to be very, very good with English. You don't need a giant vocabulary. You just need to be able to communicate. As Mr. Subramaniam pointed out here, if it's communication between two different states, you're not going to sit there and discuss Hamlet. You're just going to get the point across.
But the point is, how do you define what is an elementary language of English? Manish, come in there, and then I want to hear, are there any aspirants here who have a problem? Yeah, can I just get some space here? All right, Manish, go ahead.
I think, with all due respects to protagonists on both sides, Barkha, this is both a sterile and a redundant debate. I think the aberrations of the entire language controversy were buried, and successfully so, way back in the 60s. So to resurrect it in any manner is really trying to unnecessarily dig up the past. If you look at it, the lingua franca of the world is today neither English nor French nor Spanish. It's actually binary. The language of the internet is really binary if you break it down into what it really is. So therefore, to say that in today's day and age, you do not require some skills, and you were absolutely correct. How do you define them? Elementary, rudimentary, basic, primitive, in English, to not only be able to communicate, intersea between India, but more importantly, even to communicate with the world, because after all, you not only have central government officials, but even state government officials who are dealing with foreign investors.
So hang on, are you saying it's a redundant debate, or are you saying some English is necessary?
Well, in the sense, this whole debate about English, Khoi, Hindi or the other regional languages is really a redundant debate. The fact is that you require English because that is the official language of India as constitutionally recognized.
Well, we have two official languages, English and Hindi, and the fact is, Kirti, just define for a moment when you said functional knowledge, elementary knowledge is enough. How do we define it? What is
I'm
elementary?
talking to you, you're talking to me, aren't you? We are understanding each other.
But should you have to clear a basic test for your English language skills?
Well, that is something that could be taken up, that could be decided. But if a person has to answer questions, somebody coming, say, maybe from Bihar, has to come and answer in the English medium, he might find it difficult. Even a person coming in from Tamil Nadu who might not be well versed with English.
Can we just hear from somebody who is facing, I think, that question before him? आप बताइए कि आप शायद सिविल सर्विसेज के लिए इस साल बैठने जा रहे हैं?
जी हाँ.
और आप एक साल से प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं, किस बात को लेकर?
ये जो हिंदी मीडियम और जो अन वर्नाकुलर लैंग्वेज है जिसके साथ भेदभाव हो रहा है, मीडियम सही बात है, मीडियम एक कम्युनिकेशन का जरिया है, न कि योग्यता मापने का जरिया है।
करेक्ट।
और अगर योग्यता ही मापने का होता तो न जर्मनी आगे निकलती न जापानी निकलती, वो अपने ओन लैंग्वेज से कितने आगे प्रोग्रेस कर रहे हैं। आज कई कंट्री में अंग्रेजी बोल जा रही है, लेकिन ये भी इक्विवेलेंट टू जापान हो गया, आपका चाइना हो गया, चाहे जर्मनी हो गया, ये कहीं से पीछे नहीं है क्योंकि वो ओन लैंग्वेज है। इसी
पर यहाँ
Very
पर
well
कहा
said.
जाता है
बहुत
कि
अच्छे।
एक कोई ऐसी ओन लैंग्वेज है नहीं हमारे पास, मतलब वी डोंट हैव वन लैंग्वेज। जो आपने जिन कंट्रीज के आपने उदाहरण दिए उनमें शायद एक भाषा है जो, और कई सारे देश हैं उनका लिंग्विस्टिक बेसिस है टू एग्जिस्ट। इंडिया में ऐसा नहीं है।
मैम एक कहीं भी रिक्शे वाला भी होगा जो कहीं टूरिस्ट स्पॉट पे है वो भी इंग्लिश बोल लेता है। हम लोग भी आते हैं, हम लोग को भी लैंग्वेज में आप जो जैसे बोल रहे हो वैसे हम लोग समझ लेते हैं
जी,
समझ लेते हैं। हमको एक हैबिट चाहिए, हमको ट्रेनिंग दीजिए। अगर सिलेक्शन लैंग्वेज के बेस पे हम हमारे साथ डिस्क्रिप्शन कीजिए, हमको ट्रेनिंग दीजिए। जैसे अब जब बैंकिंग जब आया था तो वहाँ पे मैक्सिमम जो एम्प्लॉय थे वो कंप्यूटर
तो
नहीं
आप
जानते
कह रहे हैं
थे।
ये-
आपने ट्रेनिंग दिया, आज की डेट में क्या बैंकिंग नहीं चल रही है?
आप कह रहे हैं एक अंग्रेजी बायस है, आप कह रहे हैं एक अंग्रेजी बायस है।
जी
पवन, let's bring you in. Yeah.
No, I must say I disagree with Manish here. It's not a dead issue because it's affecting the lives and aspirations of a great many young
Yeah.
people. The truth, Barka, is that English has traditionally become a language of social exclusion.
A language of
And
privilege.
the upper crust of India presides over this linguistic apartheid, and the rest of them are victims.
And
or
you know that all of us in this room
Just
could be
a minute.
described as such.
No, well, you could be, and the rest are victims. The rest are victims or aspirants. Now the question is that when I gave the exam for the Foreign Service, please allow me 20
Yes.
seconds on this.
Yeah.
Half the batch of the Foreign Service came from St. Stephen's. Merely because we could give the language examination papers in those times only in English, and it was an extremely undemocratic and unfair system.
How many
Now,
Stephanians
what are
are
you
here?
doing today?
How many?
Stephanians are here.
How many Stephanians are here? Far too many. Far too
So,
many. But yeah.
the point I'm making is,
But it's an important
just
point.
let me finish this because it's important. Abdul, give me 30 seconds more. What has happened today is that you allow aspirants to give the exam in any of the recognized languages. Now in 2011 you introduced the CSAT.
Yeah.
Out of 80 questions, 45 are in a certain form of English, which is completely against the rights of those who have not studied in English medium schools.
But doesn't the debate-
and are not from a certain social background.
But doesn't the debate?
And I'll tell you what
but
the
doesn't the debate come down to a more fundamental question rather than the technicality of this exam, which is that is English a tool that a good bureaucrat
I'll
needs?
tell you. Let me answer that
Yeah.
question and let me give you just this.
Okay.
You see, statistics show you, Barkha. In 2008, I'm just giving you,
Yeah.
these are very important, sir, for this debate. In 2008, 98 students who gave the exam in Tamil qualified. In 2011, when you introduced CSAT, it was 14. Kannad 11, 2008, 2011 5. Telugu 117, 2008, 2011 29.
Okay.
Hindi 5082. 1682 in 2011, and look at what has happened in the reverse. English 2008, 5817, 2011, 9203.
So those who are comfortable
so it is
with
going
English are
against
getting
the
an advantage.
interest.
Now the point is, Manish, because you said that English is the language in a sense of business. Is that wrong? Is it wrong that more English language people are doing better in the civil services exam?
Well, Barkha, with no offense meant, and I speak absolutely in my personal capacity, and this is a fact which goes across the board,
Yeah.
that there is a certain partisan and a certain proverbial prerogative which is given by those who check papers in regional languages,
Yeah.
in order to promote that particular language. This is not something which is not very widely known,
Yeah.
but it is unfortunately not spoken. But that is not really the issue. You see, the question is whether we like it or not. You require English not only to be able to communicate, but also to be able to try and see that India gets its proper representation in the Committee of Nations.
Just to put a contrarian argument out there, if our politicians can hold very senior positions without necessarily being proficient in English, and we do have many such politicians, why is there an expectation, Ashok Vajpayee, for bureaucrat to know English?
Well, let's put the civil service
into the broader social context.
Framework, yeah.
There are three areas where Indian languages dominate: religion, politics, and media. In spite of
Yeah.
the prestige that English media
Yeah, sure,
occupies,
sure.
in terms of numbers,
Sure.
effect,
Sure,
popularity.
Sure.
So how is it that civil service will be an island in which will not reflect
The same
social
hierarchies that
reality
exist in the
the first
society.
thing.
Yeah.
The second point, if you look at the questions, these questions are really biased in favor of those who have studied management.
Yes.
But that's a different debate.
Just
But
a
that's a
minute.
different
Just
debate. It's
minute.
not a language
And
debate.
Then you translate it. The translation
Very weird.
is unpardonably bad.
Google type translation.
Anybody who has translated it,
Literal
must be
translation.
sacked
Yeah.
immediately.
I agree.
Yeah.
It says land reform. The Hindi version says Arthik Sudhar. It says the steel plant. The Hindi version says Lohe ka ped.
Steel plant.
This, you see,
Yeah.
idiomatic.
Yeah.
In fact,
They're
the
taking it
Hindi
from
version,
Google.
They're taking it from
that's
Google
good.
translation.
What kind of thing?
But the heart of the debate, and Mr. Subramanian, you wanted to come in, then I want to move down the panel, is what Ashok Vajpayee says is interesting. He's saying that the civil services will also reflect the larger bias of the society around, and in the society around, English is the language of aspiration, it's the language of mobility, it's the language of class, it's the language of privilege, but there are also people who are aspiring to that privilege.
Not so much. I go to Missouri for lectures 4 times a year.
Yeah.
I don't think that elitist kind of, this all historical, not anymore. You go to state after state, you find that they are well merged with society. The language of administration.
You're saying people don't want to learn
both
English
written.
anymore to move up?
I think the two issues are important. It is not enough to have a nodding familiarity at higher levels. You have to be extremely precise in what you write. We are not conversing. Sitting in secretariat, you are drafting laws and regulations, etc. You can't be casual about it. So at a certain level for certain people, number one. Number two, joint secretary onwards is not just the external affairs ministry.
Yeah.
With modern technology, nearly every ministry and every state also is in touch with business houses, is in touch with universities, in touch with international organizations on a constant basis. Where
So you're saying the language of English is irrelevant?
No, I'm saying knowledge is important at a higher level, number one. We should not confuse the two debates. The two debates is language policy,
Yeah.
role of English at the lower levels of administration, there's no question. It's settled now. It's only higher levels, should English is required and how much is required. The other debate is, I agree there is a point here. Don't throw the baby with the bathwater. They should be told clearly to improve the translation. There is clearly a bias, probably against numerical, but that is in a modern world. Probably economics is also turning so I think to some extent we should not overblow this debate. Don't forget, this is the first of 6 or 7 steps for that.
But you know, for me, the debate around the around the civil services is only emblematic of a larger debate. That does English occupy this pride of place? Kirti,
Not anymore.
Do you agree with TSR? I saw you nodding in agreement कि वो ज़माने गए अब now you don't need to be an अंग्रेजी वाला to get ahead in life.
I do not agree with Mr. Subramanian.
It hasn't gone, yeah.
To a certain extent.
Yeah.
Because once he gave an example of the courts. You know, there are poor people going in from real rural areas,
Yeah.
in for to the civil courts, and then they go up to High Court, and from there to Supreme Court. All the judgments are in English, and the kind of language that is used, that even his lawyer doesn't want to say because he's taken his money, whether he's won or lost, he's not interested. He simply says, "Ho gaya, jaiye aap." And then he comes back to people like us, and he wants us to translate and tell him as to what is the verdict that has been given. So these are also matters that have to be taken up seriously.
But don't reopen old debates. There are huge wounds all over the country.
I want to say
huge wounds. If you open up the House of 20 languages, don't reopen old wounds. Now they're very big.
Sir, whether it's Jayalalitha this week saying I don't want a compulsory
Sanskrit,
don't
reopen old wounds.
Whether it's that, whether it's the circular.
I suppose Sanskrit is closer to English.
Sir, the debate is about our languages as against English.
Let's not pretend this debate is old, because one day after the NDA took over, it reissued a circular of the UPA that said that in Hindi-speaking states, all ministers and bureaucrats should tweet in Hindi. You've had Jayalalitha this week opposing a compulsory Sanskrit week. आप कुछ कहना चाह रहे हैं?
मैम सबसे पहले तो बताना चाहूँगा ये मूवमेंट हम ही लोगों ने शुरू किया है और ये बेसिक डिबेट है कि यूपीएससी कारण ये आई है।
तो लेकिन आप बताइए कि आप सोचते हैं कि एक अंग्रेजी की फंक्शनल नॉलेज नेसेसरी है?
मैम बिल्कुल नेसेसरी है, लेकिन मैं मनीष सर से एक सवाल पूछना चाहूँगा, इंडिया में कितनी % पॉपुलेशन है जो इंग्लिश बोलती है? नॉट मोर देन 10%, बट सी द रिप्रेजेंटेशन,
और वो भी खराब बोलती है,
वो भी खराब बोलते हैं। सी द रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ इंग्लिश, सी द रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ इंग्लिश मीडियम,
सब मनीष जी जैसे अच्छे अंग्रेजी नहीं बोलते।
82% are from English medium, sir.
Okay.
May I? I'll respond to that,
Yeah.
Barkha.
Barkha,
if you actually look around the country, and I'm talking about the rural hinterland, the number of surrogate private convent schools
and
in
English coaching
medium,
classes,
English
yes.
coaching classes,
Yeah.
etc., are all symptomatic of the fact that it is the language of aspiration. After all, you have parents.
Manish, we need to correct it.
One second.
He's saying it should not be the language of
I'll
aspiration.
tell you whether it should be or it should not be.
Look at the quality.
Should be or it should not be. That's a different matter. But the fact is that you have parents who are ready to sacrifice.
But
the
Pawan
name.
is arguing that
Send
this
the
is an
children to
expression of
private school, to an English
Manish,
language
you say
school,
start with
rather than
Baba
a
Black
school.
Sheep.
That's the reality.
Okay, Pawan. 1 minute. Others are waiting, then I'll come back to you. Alok, as somebody who's the grandson of the acclaimed Munshi Premchand, where do you come in on this? No, because it's relevant.
Unfair.
It's relevant to
Unfair.
your, it's relevant, I'm sure, to how your thoughts were molded on the language issue.
Yes.
Can we escape? Are we all being too politically correct? Can we escape the fact, and for a moment, let's take what Manish is saying. Is it not true that everybody, if given a choice, would send their child to an English medium school?
See, the fact that English...
If given a choice.
The fact that English acquires, has in fact got a particular kind of place in our social conjuncture is undeniable.
Yes.
That it should be the case or should not be the case, it's unfortunately the case, but it is the case.
That's right.
All right. Now, I want to make 2 points about this. One is this basically there are 2 kinds of entitlement, sense of entitlement that are at play here. See, partly the complaint is coming from the Hindiwalas, and I speak as a Hindiwala. All right? The Bhedbhav argument is not a valid argument.
Why not?
I'll tell you. Quite simply, the business of examination is to take a large set of candidates and select a smaller set. There has to be some basis on which you select a smaller set from the larger set.
But should English skills be that basis?
Wait a second. The only question is whether the criteria you use in order to select a smaller set are relevant, one.
Okay.
2, whether they are perceived as fair. Okay. Now, it will be difficult for anyone to argue that the criterion of English is irrelevant. It will be difficult to argue.
Kirti is arguing that एक functional knowledge काफी है. TSR is saying 90% of the government's work is done in Hindi, तो क्यों इतना emphasis on English?
No. I'm saying English is imperative.
You're saying it's imperative.
At higher levels.
Okay.
But at lower levels, it's not necessary.
Higher levels.
I'm saying just a second. I'm making a simpler point. It is relevant.
Okay.
And given that it's relevant, it seems to me one reasonable way of selecting it, except that it is perceived as unfair.
So आप कह रहे हैं that to make this an allegation of discrimination is not valid?
No, on the contrary, that the act of discrimination is essential in examination. But more importantly, that the sense of unfairness here has to do with the entitlement of the English wala. And I have a very simple solution here, a very, very simple solution.
Which is?
Just as the non-English people are required to have an English component,
the English people,
Anglophone people like me, and the English gabbling class, all right, should all be required to take one Indian language.
Very fair.
Very fair.
Very simple.
I think that's a fair. One Indian language, not necessarily Hindi.
Not necessarily
Hindi.
One Indian language.
So can I put that
some
in the
language
audience?
other than English.
One of the things that Pawan has argued quite passionately is that this focus on English has left us a country of what did you say, of half linguist caste. Linguistic half caste. So the fact is that in this pursuit of English, we have all forgot. We are not multilingual anymore, and perhaps that is the real tragedy. Those of you who agree with Alok Rai that if there is a compulsory English section, there should also be a compulsory section for one other Indian language, raise your hand. And I think that has sizable agreement. Chandraman Prasad, you however,
बरखा हमको विदेश इंग्लैंड से तो आई नहीं कि हमें एक भाषा सीखनी है।
अरे
जो तमिलनाडु में रहता है वो तमिल जानता ही होगा, जो कन्नड़ा में रहता है वो कन्नड़ जानता ही होगा।
ऐसा नहीं होता। You would be surprised.
अंग्रेजी जानता है वो और कुछ नहीं जानता।
ऐसा नहीं, अपनी मातृभाषा में बोलना तो जानता होगा।
अंग्रेजी भी नहीं जानता है
और अंग्रेजी भी नहीं जानता।
But ये
जानने की इच्छा भी नहीं रखता।
So Mr. Subramaniam said that a lot of work at Joint Secretary and above is done in English.
It is useful for you to know.
The howlers on English notings in the bureaucracy would make the most humorous book ever.
Pavan, I'm not saying all the work is done very well. I'm saying work is done there.
So then the question is, why should badly spoken English become the lingua franca of India?
They can't do the work in 20 languages.
Okay, but I think this is an interesting point that Kirti says that अरे हम सब जानते हैं एक और भाषा, लेकिन किस level पर जानते हैं? I think would we be able to clear a test that actually checks our comprehension on it? I'm not so sure. Chandraman Prasad, you however want to build a temple, you have already laid its foundation stone to the English language. ऐसा क्यों?
I would like to ask, why was Constitution of India written in English and not in Magahi, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, वगैरह वगैरह? And
although that same Constituent Assembly initially wanted to keep Hindi as the official language.
UPSC is a all India service, and candidates can be posted anywhere in India. Why should someone not knowing English aspire for an all India service? Number 3, if English language is that kind of a problem, how many of you have agitated that all science and mathematics books should be translated into Hindi, Tamil, Magai, Tagai, Pagai? And 4th, the people like us would name their dogs and cats in English. They would communicate with their dogs. How are Tommy? Tommy bad, Tommy good. These are the people who talk with their dogs in English, but want others to learn Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Marathi.
But Chandrabhan ji, अबे can I take
आप
this
इस
question?
गंभीरता को ले जा रहे हैं, ये तरीका नहीं है बात करने का। कुत्ते को ऐसे बोलते हैं, प्लीज।
Why people name their dogs in English?
प्लीज एक
Yes, it's true.
वो तो हिकारत से भी हो सकता है।
महोदय ऐसे ना बात करें।
सीरियस सवाल ये है कि Chandrabhan ji I think is trying to say that everybody is aspiring to English and it's hypocritical to suggest otherwise.
देखिए अभी आपने, मैं तो हिंदी में ही बोलूंगा क्योंकि भाषा के ऊपर बहस हो रही है। अभी आपने कहा था कि हमारे पास ऐसी कोई भाषा नहीं है जो कि एक लिंक लैंग्वेज हो, एक जोड़ भाषा हो, पूरे देश को जोड़ती हो अंग्रेजी के अलावा। मैं केवल 2 छोटे-छोटे आंकड़े आपके सामने रखूंगा। 1960 की सेंसस पर नजर डालिए। पूरे दक्षिण भारत में जब लोगों से ये पूछा गया कि आपकी दूसरी प्रायोरिटी वाली लैंग्वेज, दूसरी प्राथमिकता वाली भाषा कौन सी है, तो उसमें से लगभग 1% लोगों ने भी हिंदी का नाम नहीं लिया। लेकिन जब 1990 के सेंसस पर नजर डालिए, जब 1990 में सेंसस हुआ और उसमें लोगों से फिर यही सवाल पूछा गया, तो ये देख के बहुत ताज्जुब होता है कि पूरे दक्षिण भारत में, जो कि पूरी तरीके से गैर हिंदी इलाका है, मैं मराठी, गुजराती, उड़िया, असम की बात नहीं कर रहा हूं, जहां हिंदी का प्रभाव पहले से मौजूद है, या महाराष्ट्र की बात नहीं कर रहा हूं, पूरे दक्षिण भारत में बड़े पैमाने पर लोगों ने कहा कि हिंदी उनकी दूसरी प्राथमिकता वाली भाषा है, अपनी मातृभाषा तमिल, तेलुगु और कन्नड़ और मलयालम के अलावा। केवल तमिलनाडु में ये सीन, तमिलनाडु में तमिलनाडु में नजारा थोड़ा कमजोर लगता है, लेकिन पिछले 30 साल में अब उसके बाद से 2 सेंसस और हो चुके हैं।
इससे क्या कंक्लूजन निकलता है?
इससे कंक्लूजन ये निकलता है कि हिंदी पूरे देश में एक जबरदस्त लिंक लैंग्वेज बनने की तरफ बढ़ रही है। उसकी जब हिंदी मैं कहता हूं, जब मैं हिंदी कहता हूं तो केवल मैं हिंदी नहीं कहता हूं, हिंदी, पंजाबी, उर्दू, हिंदुस्तानी और इन
that would seem like the dominance of the north over the south.
अगर भाषाओं को मिला दिया जाए तो ये एक जायंट स्पीच कम्युनिटी बनती है।
लेकिन अभय जी इसमें ये सवाल भी खड़ा होता है। अन्ना दुराई ने पहले कहा था कि if numerical strength is the measure of it, then the crow would be the national bird, not the peacock.
मैं न्यूमेरिकल स्ट्रेंथ की बात ही नहीं कर रहा हूं। नहीं बरखा, एक मिनट, बात पूरी खत्म नहीं हुई, बात पूरी खत्म नहीं, प्लीज बात पूरी खत्म नहीं हुई, मैं उसकी बात ही नहीं कर रहा हूं। जिस वक्त तमिलनाडु के अंदर हिंदी विरोधी हिंसा हो रही थी, दंगे हो रहे थे, जिसका नेतृत्व करुणानिधि के हाथ में था, इसमें 60 लोग मारे गए थे और रोज आगजनी होती थी, उसमें द्रमुक के नेताओं ने, अन्ना दुराई ने स्पष्ट निर्देश दिया था कि किसी भी हिंदी प्रचारणी, दक्षिण भारतीय हिंदी प्रचारणी सभा के दफ्तर पर हमला न किया जाए। हम हिंदी के प्रचार के खिलाफ नहीं है,
बिल्कुल
हम हिंदी को थोपने के खिलाफ हैं। दक्षिण भारत का जो हिंदी विरोधी आंदोलन है वो भी दरअसल हिंदी विरोधी
मैं तो एक और कॉम्प्लेक्स सवाल उठा रही हूँ कि इस कंट्री में कोई लिंक लैंग्वेज हो सकती है, ना इंग्लिश ना हिंदी, मुझे तो लगता है कोई भी नहीं हो सकता।
नहीं हो सकती है।
बरखा इनकी स्टैटिस्टिक्स करेक्ट स्टैटिस्टिक्स हैं। हिंदी का अपोजिशन जितना था 30 साल पहले उतना कम हो गया, लेकिन अगर इस सब्जेक्ट को आप रीओपन करो नेशनली, वापस जाएगा उस नंबर पे। Be very careful because it will happen automatically.
Yeah, Manish, and then I have to take a question here.
No, Manish, two more short points.
हिंदी बोले ताली नहीं बजाएगी, बढ़िया ताली।
Two more short points. Don't confuse national language policy with policy for higher administration, with education policy, with UPSC exam. We are confused all four different segments.
Sir, isn't it connected? Manish, quickly, I'll have to say questions.
The question is that if over a period of time, census shows that there is a gradual acceptance of Hindi, then let the natural progression take place on its own. The moment you try and inject even a measure of coercion into it, I agree with Mr. Subramaniam, you will reopen old wounds and tear this country asunder.
Yeah, so Abhay sir, I'm really glad you brought this point up, but it's just that I'm young and I choose to live in today. So 1960 census might have said that we all wanted in Hindi, but today I lived in Bangalore for 14 months. No one wants to speak in Hindi. Tamil Nadu, no one wants to speak in Hindi. It's all English. So it's actually broken down to 3 questions. Considering UPSC also gets to IFS, goes to IFS and IAS, and as sir rightly pointed out, at higher levels it is English, right? So are we one agreeing? Is it right to say that English is a requirement for at least basic?
Can I ask you something? You said no one wants to speak Hindi. Do you speak any other language apart from English?
उर्दू बोलता हूँ मैं, काफी अच्छी बोल लेता हूँ अपने हिसाब से।
मैं छोटी सी बात कहूंगा, बरका मैं छोटी सी बात,
मैं अपनी छोटी सी बात खत्म कर दूं तो मैं ये कह रहा था,
लगा आपका स्टेटमेंट खत्म हो गया।
तो मैं ये कह रहा था आपसे कि अब जो है जमाना थोड़ा बदल गया है। उस टाइम सेल्फ रिलायंस के मामला चल रहा था, आजकल इंटरनेशनल इंटीग्रेशन का मामला चल रहा है। तो इंग्लिश जो है जाननी बहुत जरूरी है, चाहे आप बिजनेस में हो चाहे आप गवर्नमेंट में हो। उसके अलावा ईमेल जो होता है हिंदी में नहीं होता है, जबकि बाइनरी लैंग्वेज है इंटरनेट पे, लेकिन इंग्लिश की योग्यता होनी जरूरी होती है।
मैं आपकी बात से पूरी तरह सहमत हूं। आप जो कह रहे हैं नहीं।
Okay, so are we actually going to politicize this entire thing, going like हिंदी क्या है?
मैं आपकी बात से एक छोटी सी बात, मैं आपकी बात से पूरी तरह सहमत हूं। केवल 2 छोटी-छोटी बातें कहूंगा। पहली बात तो ये है कि जब ये कहा जा रहा है तो अंग्रेजी पढ़ने लिखने के खिलाफ कोई स्टेटमेंट नहीं दिया जा रहा है, नंबर 1 बात। दूसरी बात यह है कि आप तमिलनाडु में जाइए, तमिलनाडु में अगर आप सिर्फ अंग्रेजी बोलते हैं तो आप मद्रास में रास्ता नहीं पूछ सकते। 1 मिनट, अगर आप हिंदी जानते हैं तो आप मद्रास में रास्ता नहीं भूल सकते, आपको कोई ना कोई रास्ता जरूर बता देगा। मैं आपको यकीन दिलाता हूं।
ओके, कीर्ति एंड देन पवन।
मेरे ख्याल से जो मैंने शुरू में कहा था, जो अपने प्रारंभ में कहा था, उसको लोग शायद समझ नहीं पाए।
पर ये जो सर्कुलर एनडीए ने इशू किया, जो यूपीए का पुराना सर्कुलर था, that all ministers in Hindi speaking states should tweet in Hindi. There's an impression, maybe because you have a prime minister also who speaks a lot in Hindi at home. There is an impression कि बीजेपी के टेन्योर के दौरान हिंदी पर ज्यादा एम्फेसिस दिया जाएगा।
हिंदी के साथ में जितनी भी प्रांतीय भाषाएं हैं, सबका सम्मान किया जाएगा। भारत की भाषाएं हैं। अगर आप दक्षिण में जाइएगा तो आपको कन्नड़ है, तमिल है, मलयालम है, वो आप सब सुन सकते हैं, तेलुगु है, आप बहुत सारी भाषाएं हैं। तो किसी भाषा के साथ कोई वो नहीं किया जा रहा है कि हिंदी किसी के ऊपर थोपा जा रहा है। मेरा केवल यह कहना है कि हर एक प्रांत की जो अपनी प्रांतीय भाषा है, अष्टम सूची में है, जो 8 शेड्यूल में है।
3 language policy was the policy we were meant to follow, English, Hindi and 1 regional language.
ठीक है, परफेक्ट। तो उसमें अपनी अपनी जगह का अपना रीजनल लैंग्वेज आ गया उसका। तो मेरा केवल इतना कहना, मैं कहना कंप्लीट
अंचल ने ठीक से फॉलो नहीं किया। हिंदी भाषी दूसरी भारतीय भाषा सीखने में कोताही करते हैं, वो अनिच्छुक है। ये उनका दोष है।
How many of you
मैंने कंप्लीट ही नहीं कर पाया।
एक मिनट, चंद्रमान, चंद्रमान, you will ask your question, but Kirti will finish his point.
मैंने जो कहा कि प्रांतीय भाषाएं अपनी लोग उसमें लें, जो अलग अलग प्रश्न पत्र आते हैं जी, वह प्रश्न पत्र अगर उनकी भाषा में तो कोई सवाल ही बात नहीं है। और अंग्रेजी का आप एक ग्रामर का रख लीजिए और एक अंग्रेजी का
languages of doing business. आप कह रहे हैं कि अपनी अपनी भाषा में ले। I think
no, I said elementary English you should know and you should say कि कहाँ तक होना चाहिए। बात खत्म हो गया।
Many of you,
nobody is taking away English or I am against English.
Many of you have been in government. Pavan, do you not need? Can you say? And I think there Alok has a point. We're not talking randomly about the country. We're talking about the business of government. Now, as I understand it, we have two official languages, English and Hindi. Are we going to say that it doesn't matter whether you can speak either of these? You can take your exam in whatever language you know.
No, you I want to answer you.
Can must have elementary. Yes. Please answer me. Please answer me.
See, Barkha, the evangelism in favor of one particular language, including Hindi,
is a problem.
May reopen precisely the kind of past we put behind us. We need to respect all our languages. That issue is different from creating a level playing field for aspirants who wish to become government servants.
Okay.
Because they are being tested for their competence as bureaucrats, not for their knowledge of English. And I believe...
And you're saying the two are unconnected.
Yes.
You're saying the two are unconnected. Okay, your question here.
Sir, my simple question is that why are these two unconnected? We have seen that our professionals get an edge over the Chinese because they cannot speak English in the international foray.
So
and when UPSC, which is considered to be an institution that has to portray excellence, why should this modicum of English be considered?
Translators, or a people who are doing this kind of back-end jobs.
Okay, Chandraman had a question.
I would like to ask. Pavan has raised a far more fundamental question. If you are actually going to be grooming administrators, then why do you need to test them for psychology and sociology and maths and Sanskrit and various other things? I think it's completely redundant to the entire science of administration.
So you're
you need to change the entire paradigm of how you select your administrators.
Chandraman, your question.
I would like to ask a simple question from the audience. Once you become parents, how many of you are going to say that my child will study in Hindi school? How many of you? Please raise hand.
At least Bal Bharti.
When you become collector,
आप क्या बोलेंगे इसमें? ये सवाल पूछा जा रहा है कि अगर मौका मिले तो सभी अंग्रेजी मीडियम के स्कूल में अपने बच्चों को भेजना चाहेंगे?
मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा कि पहली बात तो मुझे ये नहीं लगता कि सभी इंग्लिश मीडियम स्कूल में भेजना चाहेंगे, क्योंकि मीडियम तो एक अभिव्यक्ति का माध्यम है और ज्ञान प्राप्त करने का एक जरिया है.
And sir, once you become collector, I am sure you will choose best English medium school.
देखिए दिल्ली में एक विद्यालय है, सरदार पटेल विद्यालय.
जी.
बहुत अच्छे अंग्रेजी बोलने वाले घरों लोग भी चाहते हैं कि सरदार पटेल विद्यालय में अपने बच्चे को दाखिल कराएं, क्योंकि वहाँ शुरू में शिक्षा हिंदी मीडियम से होती है, अंग्रेजी मीडियम से नहीं होती है.
Okay, this boy. By the way, this boy here is from Sardar Patel, so I'll allow him an answer. Did you learn compulsory Hindi until class 5?
Till class 5, I did.
So isn't that a better model?
It is much better.
Here you are.
That's what I wanted to
I choose to speak in English today.
And all research shows, Barkha, that if you are first, if you are first group,
Barkha is that all the biggest language chauvinists in this country have all sent their children to English medium schools.
That is a good point. Let me come in on that. You said elementary English. But isn't it true, as Chandrabhan Prasad says, that jahan par option ho, as parents we would all want to send our children to English medium schools because we recognize that there are hierarchical advantages, economic advantages, international advantages. Jobs.
Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
You talk about what percentage of people who can go to English school and afford to send their children to school. Now, when I see, I as a public representative, let me complete. As a public representative, and Manish would also agree to me to an extent, well, Punjab is a very well-to-do state from where he comes. But I as a public representative coming in from Bihar, I have seen the state of affairs as far as the schools are concerned and the poverty. Not many of them can even send their children to school. Forget about English medium schools.
अगर option हो, अगर मौका मिले,
give them option. You first give them education, then only you can give them option.
Okay. There's a question here. I believe you coach IS aspirants. Is that correct?
So my question is that isn't it the state's responsibility to create a meritocratic society wherein equal opportunity
education policy,
then you can compete with the others. The other thing is that suppose you are saying a fish to ride a tree and you are compelling an elephant to swim with the fish. Is it feasible?
I want Alok to take this question because you said ki as in Hindi wala, there is a discrimination, yes, but every exam sets certain criteria. Ye kehte hain ki this militates against meritocracy.
Well, it depends on. No, hang on a second.
Yeah.
The only question is, how you define merit for administration? I don't know.
But Manish is a good point. कि अगर अंग्रेजी पे नहीं टेस्ट करना तो बाकी 10 चीजों पे क्या टेस्ट कर रहे हैं?
How does that follow?
What is relevant to being a functioning bureaucrat? I think that an efficient bureaucrat.
I think
I'm coming there.
What is being tested?
Bureaucrat where? And where? In village or in Delhi or in bureaucrat where?
Your natural career will take you through all these roles.
No,
it will not keep you in the district only.
Not all. Only the higher bureaucrat. Only 5%.
10% of civil servants in this country make it to Delhi.
Okay.
90%.
Yes.
Serve their entire life and career
even less.
in the
state. Let Alok complete his point.
You can't be preparing.
English will not be necessary in 90% places.
It's not necessary.
I'm not saying it's necessary. Is it relevant? Is it one way of discriminating? Now, wait a second. Now, but this, because discrimination is of the essence of examination. I'm trying to get this point through.
Yeah.
Discrimination is of the essence. The point is unfair discrimination is what we are talking about. Now, this unfair
Is it unfair or not?
Right. Now, hang on a second. I think it is unfair.
You do
I think it is unfair.
Okay.
The point is, and this unfairness can be corrected by demanding a similar linguistic
I think that's a fair
from
solution.
Anglo speakers. Simple.
Not really a question, but this is a case of situational irony because we have two bureaucrats here, Ashok Vajpayee and Pawan Verma, who are known to the world for being exceptional translators from Hindi to English and vice versa. Therefore, what is the irony?
Yeah.
This whole debate. Excuse me, I think when it comes to languages, we are looking at equipping ourselves to be someone in the world, nothing more. So we cannot use the word elementary. Let's not say that. Let us not say that a government servant is fine if he just has an elementary knowledge of English. No. Do not bring down the status of a government servant by saying that. Let us say that whatever language he knows, let him know it well. And if he equips himself in English, he is able to stand head and shoulders above the crowds, like Ashok Vajpayee and Pawan Verma.
I think that's a great point.
It's not a great point. It's not a great point. Let me explain why it's not a great point.
एक सवाल जोड़ लूं, एक अपना सवाल जोड़ लूं. मुझे बहुत बुरा लगता है कि जब मैं आपसे हिंदी में ये सवाल पूछ रही हूँ, मुझे सेल्फ कॉन्शियसनेस होती है कि मेरी हिंदी अच्छी होगी या नहीं.
कोई बात नहीं.
नहीं, मुझे होती है. क्यों बात कर रही हूँ? मैं ये क्यों बात कर रही हूँ? क्योंकि मैं चाहती हूँ कि मैं हिंदी उसी प्रोफिशिएंसी के साथ बोलूँ जिस प्रोफिशिएंसी के साथ मैं अंग्रेजी बोल सकती हूँ. और मुझे कई बार अपने पेरेंट्स पे बहुत गुस्सा आता है कि प्रोग्रेसिव बनाने के चक्कर में कोई और भाषा ही नहीं समझाई. मैं पंजाबी हूं, पंजाबी भी ठीक तरह से बोल नहीं पाती. आई एम टेलिंग यू दिस इज अ स्टेट ऑफ मेनी पीपल. ये जो कह रही है, ये कह रही है कि हर भाषा कोशिश करे, किसी भाषा को आप सीखें तो उसको अच्छी तरह से, जिस तरह से वो बोली जानी चाहिए, जिस तरह से वो लिखी जानी चाहिए, उसी तरह से आप भी सीखें.
मैं ही कह रहा हूं,
व्हाई एलिमेंटरी नॉलेज. पहले अभी एंड देन
लेट मी आंसर.
या ओके, हाँ, सॉरी, पहले अभी बोल रहे हैं अपनी पॉइंट.
नहीं, यहाँ जो बहस हो रही है वो इस बात पर नहीं हो रही है कि अंग्रेजी कितनी अच्छी आनी चाहिए एक ब्यूरोक्रेट को. मेरा मानना
ये भी एक पार्ट ऑफ डिबेट है.
ना, मेरा बहस इस बात पे हो रही है कि अंग्रेजी में जो परीक्षा ली जाती है यूपीएससी की, अंग्रेजी में जो परीक्षा ली जाती है वो इस तरह क्यों ली जाती है कि वो दूसरी भाषाओं के माध्यम से पढ़ने वाले जो बच्चे हैं उनको उससे नुकसान होता है. ये पूरा मुद्दा इसलिए पैदा हुआ है, इसलिए बहस यहां पर किया जा रहा है.
Kirti and you both need to respond to what she has said. Kirti laid the framework.
उनके 43% से घट के
she is saying why elementary. You should say you must know
well.
it well.
What should I know? I should be speaking with the Queen's English.
Not Queen's
with a stiff upper lip.
No, madam.
That is what. Is it
अगर आप कोई
necessary?
भाषा सीखे, wouldn't you want to know it well?
मुझे एक चीज आप बताइए.
आप अरबिक सीख लीजिए, स्पेनिश सीख लीजिए, कुछ भी भाषा सीख लीजिए.
No, but you are discriminating.
Why elementary only?
No, because elementary, because English is an international language, people see that, but my regional language, country's regional languages should not be avoided.
Okay,
the answer is this.
Pawan, go ahead.
Ma'am, the exam for bureaucrats is not one necessarily for literary excellence. Atal Bihari Vajpayee once said that it's a myth that the British left India as a result of the freedom movement. They left because they could not bear anymore the massacre of the English language in India. They left. The point I'm making is, civil service exam is one to test your skill. Mr. Ashok Vajpayee, and I don't count myself in that category, has achieved a certain level of literary excellence. But with due humility, in addition to my bureaucratic role, I've written 20 books. So now, every bureaucrat does not have to become a literature. Okay. You are supposed to serve and administer.
Okay.
For which an elementary knowledge is good enough.
Yeah,
Pawan speaks English so well. It's correct that he's become a politician. Now it's left bureaucracy.
Sir, I can speak.
No, please. Last week I went abroad. This is to answer a point made by Mr. Kirti Azad. I went abroad. The departure form, immigration form that I had filled up was in Hindi. For the first time I saw that. Are we now suggesting that in Bangalore it should be in Canaries? Yeah. And in the departure form, only the local people can follow. Yeah. We have to be a little careful opening up this kind of a territory. I also went to Hong Kong. I went to Tokyo. I went to 7 countries on that trip. Every country had English along with the local language, including Korea.
Can we escape that? Can we escape? You had a question.
It should not be about traveling. It should not be about anything of that sort. The job requirement of a bureaucrat is to solve problems, is to look at the local issues, talk to the local people, understand the needs of the community. And the proficiency in English is just a way of kind of discriminating against.
So you don't think that a bureaucrat needs to know English?
I don't think so at all. I think a bureaucrat needs to know.
90%
the language.
90% don't need.
Now here's my question. Here's my question to both Ashok Vajpayee and TSR Subramaniam. You keep saying, एक minute. You keep saying 90% don't need. How do we know from the beginning which 10% is going to end up in Delhi?
Because
where they do need? I assume. What about those in the IFS? What about those who go into the foreign services?
All the state civil services.
I'll answer.
Yeah. All the state services. They normally stay all the service life in their whole state. It is only all India services which are covered by the UPSC who have mobility all over India. It is for those people it is meant to have an additional language, English language requirement.
Okay.
It is not for
Subramaniam.
work in
Mr. Subramaniam, you also have state service officers who get promoted to the IAS. Yes. So therefore, say that they stay their whole life, is an oxymoron.
Yeah, you just now said it. They went there because they couldn't tolerate the massacre. But Lord Macaulay, Thomas Macaulay, he in his minute said that I want Indians who are Indians in blood, but in class they should be in psych, in opinion, moral and intellect they should be English. That is why it strives for, and they succeeded to quite a great extent. Because a stitch in time saves 9, but we haven't actually stitched it. And Mr. Manish is right when he says that soft skill and spoken English institutions are brimming. They are definitely brimming because I am a soft skill instructor and I am very much aware that these institutions are brimming all over India.
Okay. The whole Macaulay thing, is colonialism relevant, Alok, to this debate at all?
100%.
Yeah?
It's deeply relevant.
No.
It's
Why?
deeply relevant.
Why?
Oh, because in fact we have an Anglophone ruling class, and that Anglophone ruling class has a sense of entitlement that needs to be broken. Even though I might be confused.
Chandrabhan Prasad, as somebody who also has worked for Dalit rights all your life, ये यहाँ जो बोला जा रहा है कि ये एक elitism है, आपको तो आइडेंटिफाई करना चाहिए कि ये जो प्रिविलेज।
मैं 2 चीजें कहना चाहूंगा।
अंग्रेजी बोलो भाई। हिंदी बोलो, अंग्रेजी बोलो।
So that they can understand. See, about British rule in India. I am the greatest critic of British rule. You know why? They came too late and left too early. Number 2.
That has a whole different debate now.
Yes. We have a small, we have a little life. Once we get it, we can be good if we are honest. If English is good for my children, English should be good to all of you.
Okay, there's someone here who made an effort to learn English. Tell us why.
See, till my 12th standard, I was completely in the Hindi medium, and I was very much afraid of speaking in English because I was very much conscious as whether my pronunciation would be right or not. But actually I am the activist for the persons with disabilities, and in 2011 I was supposed to go to South Korea to represent India in an international conference something. So that time there was a kind of consciousness.
So you made it a point to learn?
I learned English pronunciation part by India Islamic Culture Center, the English house where Mr. Munawar Zama was our trainer, and I got the kind of confidence that yes.
So what difference has it made to your life now that you did this English course?
See, I am from very small town of Rajasthan, and all my education was in Hindi. But I think that it should not be excused that if I am in Hindi, then all I should be given a kind of concession, and I can't learn English, and like Hindi should be like my language. It is. I should say that.
Okay. I have to start taking lost comments. Which part of the country are you from?
Ma'am, I'm from Manipur.
Okay, what do you feel? Because that's also a whole different debate in terms of what's happening to all our other languages.
Ma'am, I'm not talking here about the most prestigious service in India, and India as a developing, as a potential, as a future leader. Are not we going to talk about the best of the best, and which is what we need today? Why can't the Indian government send their civil servants to Singapore when the Japanese government, when the Chinese government can plume and send?
So is language relevant? To find the best of the best is language.
Well, I'm not telling that a person who could speak who speaks good English is a very good administrator or magistrate, but it's an all India service. Sometimes he may be bossed in Nagaland, sometimes he may be bossed in Uttarakhand, and he needs to equip with that.
Okay, Ashok Bajpai, respond to
I sat on the selection board once.
Yes.
And there was a lady who who was a Dalit, a lady, spoke in Telugu. And we had a translator who translated. Her performance outdid the performance of all other candidates.
Okay.
Now, 1. 2, these 90% civil servants, many of them from All India services, who go to other states, do learn their language.
They have to compulsorily learn that language.
So is it a non-issue, Ashokji?
It is a non-issue to the extent that language should not become a barrier in the beginning. It should, if people want to come to Delhi and go internationally, let them learn English while in service.
Okay.
Like this girl
did.
My question is, the question was being asked that can India have a linked language? Okay, a very simple solution to that is why not induce both Hindi and English at the very fundamental levels of education, so that no one can say कि हिंदी थोपी जा रही है, सिर्फ हिंदी थोपी जा रही है. Hindi.
What about other regional languages?
You can have one regional language depending on the region to region, and plus mother tongue is always one thing which you know. If my mother is talking to me in Kannada, I always know Kannada. So why not just keep that aside? Both are official languages. Let's induce both of them in the very education system of India.
Okay, Pavan, is that an acceptable solution? I've got to start
The 3-language formula is a good idea. And what has happened in Sardar Patel is good because all research, Barkha, shows that if you are first adept and proficient in your mother tongue, you learn foreign language faster.
But in a school, how do you identify what your mother tongue is? You'll have
let it be in whatever language. But then after the 6th or 8th grade, you can easily pick up English. But English should not become a barrier for the civil service.
Mother tongue जानते हैं, लेकिन आप देखेंगे कि बहुत से लोग नहीं जानते.
No, ठीक है. I do agree that 3 language should be there. It was already muted earlier. Yeah. The only thing is that it didn't carry on for a long time.
Are you more convinced at the end of the hour?
Barkha, I think you see the 3-language formula also has its own perils, because the fact is that a large number of states, would not really buy into it all that easily. Yeah. So therefore, the 2-language formula that we have, the regional language and English,
so it doesn't have to be Hindi
possibly settles
the
lay of the land. So therefore, the moment you try and inject Hindi into it, for example, I come from a non-Hindi speaking state. In Punjab, hardly any people
will speak Hindi.
So therefore, if you are going to inject Hindi into a state like Punjab, I can see the ramifications.
Look, I've got to end, but last response to that. He's saying it should be a 2-language policy, not a 3-language one.
Well, I personally think, 3 are better than 2, and I want to get to the question of, there should be the question I want to pose to your audience is, what do they think would be a valid basis for discrimination, given that discrimination is required?
And they don't seem to accept the language.
Whether or not, I don't know what administrative skill is, but linguistic skill in one or more language has traditionally been considered an index of mental ability. Test for language, more than one language.
Absolutely. Abhay ji, last comment.
देखिए जो चंद्रभान जी जो कह रहे हैं वो कितना भी अपने आप को अंग्रेजी वाला कहते रहे हैं, मैं उन्हें हिंदी वाला ही मानता हूं, लेकिन उनकी एक अंग्रेजी राजनीति है, मतलब जो उनकी एक अंग्रेजी पॉलिटिक्स है जो वो करते हैं, उसके लिए उन्हें धन्यवाद. लेकिन उस चक्कर में वो एक नए किस्म के ब्राह्मणवाद को बढ़ावा दे रहे हैं, जो कि भाषाई ब्राह्मणिज्म है।
A new kind of elitism. Mr. Subramanian, I leave you with the last one. I अब time समय खत्म हो गया. I leave you with the last one.
Barka, today this discussion has covered a whole university seminar for 6 month seminar. We have covered now. Now Hindi is moving slowly but steadily as the national link language for the common people, unless you interfere with it. Unless you now come and insist on it, it's going to happen in the next 5 to 20 years.
So that's very
interesting. Absolute agreement.
For bureaucracy, higher bureaucracy, today as a leading country in the world, English is imperative. Don't downplay it. Number 2. Thirdly, UPSC, there are some problems there which must be sorted out. Any anti-Indian language, pro-English bias should be knocked out.
Okay.
And you
we have to create a level playing field.
So English is an imperative, but there must be a level playing field.
I also love Indian languages, and people are already sending their kids to English medium schools. We should create museums for all Indian languages, because within 100 years, Indian languages will have disappeared.
I don't think I agree at all. But that's a whole different debate. We'll leave it there. We wish we could have, multilingualism raises its own problems. How do you translate? For example, if we had a third language in this show today, how would somebody access it? So there are many practical problems. Thank you very much. Thank you to our audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.